I didn't think twice when Brooke invited me to her family dinner at the waterfront restaurant in Savannah. The kind of place that made its name off glossy magazine spreads. Brick walls with old nautical maps, reclaimed wood tables, and menus written in looping script as if that made the prices easier to swallow. She said her parents wanted to celebrate a strong quarter for her department. I figured it was one of those nights where everyone dressed a little nicer than they needed to, smiled a little longer than they wanted to, and the bill came with a tip line that hurt to fill in. We were halfway through appetizers, seared scallops with a drizzle of something French, when she reached into her clutch to grab a lipstick. I wasn't watching her hand, not exactly, but when you've been with someone long enough, your eyes track them without thinking. That's when I saw them. 2 paper hotel keycard envelopes tucked behind her wallet. The logo was from a boutique place just off River Street, the kind of spot travel bloggers gushed about for its romantic views and in asterisk mate suites. One envelope looked a little worn around the edges. The other, crisp. Both had the room number handwritten in neat block letters. But that wasn't all. Pressed between the envelopes and her wallet was a folded receipt. It had shifted just enough for the top line to peek out, like it was daring me to read it. Day use 4 hours. The date was today. The timestamp? 3 hours before this dinner. I felt something in my chest misfire, like a heartbeat caught on the wrong beat. My mind started running before I could tell it to slow down. I told myself it could be nothing, could be work, could be someone else's, could be a dozen explanations that didn't end with my wife standing in a hotel suite that wasn't ours. I might have convinced myself of one of those softer explanations, if the universe hadn't decided to kick me while I was still catching my breath. Her smartwatch lit up on her wrist, the light reflecting against her wine glass. The preview was just long enough for me to read it. Late check-in confirmed, Harborview Suite. She caught me looking, not in an obvious way but enough. Her eyes flicked to mine and held for half a second too long, as if she was calculating what I'd seen and how much she needed to explain. Then her hand slid over mine, warm, steady, and deliberate. "Oh," she said with a soft laugh, like she just remembered something small. "That's just work stuff. We're using the hotel for an event next month. Needed to check the rooms. You know how it is." She said it casually, too casually. Her voice wrapped in that practiced lightness she used on clients who didn't like the first answer she gave them. Before I could decide whether to nod or call her on it, she leaned away, raising her voice toward her uncle at the far end of the table. "Uncle Richard, you have to make the first toast." And just like that, the spotlight shifted. Champagne glasses lifted, silverware chimed against crystal, and the hum of conversation swelled to fill every gap where my questions might have slipped through. I smiled when I was supposed to, raised my glass at the right moments, even laughed when her cousin told a story about dropping his phone in the river. If anyone had been looking closely, they might have noticed I was quieter than usual, that my fork hovered longer over my plate, that I wasn't asking Brooke's parents about their upcoming trip like I normally would. But I doubt they saw it. Brooke was in performance mode. Flawless hair, easy charm, quick with a compliment or a self-deprecating joke. She knew how to work a table, and she kept the attention swirling just enough to keep my mind from focusing on the fact that somewhere in her purse were 2 hotel key envelopes, a same-day day-use receipt, and a notification for a suite check-in. I caught her checking her watch twice more before dessert. Not in a way that said she was bored or tired, but in a way that felt time-conscious, like there was something after this. When the group shifted toward taking photos outside by the railing, I stood beside her, smiling for her sister's phone. The warm night air off the water smelled faintly of salt and old wood. She leaned against me just enough for the picture, but her body stayed angled toward the group, not toward me. No one else noticed. On the surface, the night went off without a hitch. Good food, better wine, all the right small talk. We kissed goodbye to her parents, promised her mother we'd visit more, and strolled back to the car like nothing had shifted. But it had. The whole evening had been a smooth surface with something jagged just under it. I couldn't stop thinking about that little cluster of objects in her clutch. The envelopes, the receipt, the notification. Maybe any one of them alone wouldn't have meant much. but together they felt like a sentence in a language I was starting to understand, one word at a time. She had moved the conversation away from it with almost surgical precision. She'd done it so well, I was willing to bet half the table thought I'd simply spaced out for a moment. I didn't push it. Not there, not with her family watching. But I knew this wasn't going to fade in the morning like a bad dream. This wasn't a misunderstanding that would vanish with one explanation. Something in my gut, something that had been quiet for months, was now wide awake. One stone had been pulled from the foundation, and it wasn't going back. On the drive home, Savannah's lights slid past the window like blinking metronomes, too steady for the way my thoughts kept hiccuping back to her clutch. Those envelopes, that 4-hour day-use receipt. Brooke hummed along with the radio, tapping her fingers on her knee to a beat she wasn't really listening to. I answered her small talk with smaller talk. She filled the space, like she always did when she needed silence to look normal. When we pulled into our lot, she asked if I'd grabbed the wine her parents sent us. I said sure. In the elevator, she leaned in, kissed my cheek, and whispered, "Thanks for being good tonight." Good. Like I was a dog that hadn't barked at a delivery truck. I smiled anyway. The doors opened. We walked to our apartment like we always did, hand in hand, keys in the bowl, shoes by the mat. The choreography of domestic life stayed tight even while the music inside me slipped half a step off. I didn't ask about the hotel envelopes. Not then. I let the night do its routine. Rinse the glasses, fold the napkins she insists on washing by hand, seal leftovers into the too small fridge George Foreman keeps humming against. She ducked into the bedroom and came out in an oversized sweatshirt from college that made her look young, innocent, familiar. She sat cross-legged on the couch and scrolled, laughing at a video I didn't care about. It would have been easy to pretend the receipt didn't exist. People build entire lives out of that kind of pretending. Instead, I watched the patterns that had been hiding in plain sight. Her phone went on Do Not Disturb at 10 most nights. I used to think it was a healthy boundary. Over time, the boundary widened into a wall. During the day, notifications flurried across her watch. By evening, everything was wiped clean, like the day hadn't happened. Location services toggled off, then on again, then off. She said it saved battery. It did, I guess, if the battery you're trying to save is your own story. Fridays turned into client nights. Always Fridays. Her calendar stacked with initials. J, L, M, C, A, R. Alphabet soup that meant nothing to me and, I started to suspect, nothing to the people who signed her checks. Receipts trickled in on our budgeting app, wine bars and small plates 2 blocks from that same harbor hotel. When I teased her about becoming a margarita influencer, she laughed and told me I was cute. Then she changed the subject to my work, or my sister's baby shower, or anything that wasn't the hotel whose logo now lived in my head. The fitness retreats started in the spring. 3-day weekends with sunrise yoga and digital detox, according to the brochures she left on the counter like evidence of being wholesome. They coincided almost mathematically with Nate's business trips, Nate with the perfect fade and the cologne that arrives 5 seconds before he does. Nate who says, "We either crush Q3 or Q3 crushes us." As if the quarter is a wave and he's the only one with a surfboard. Brooke swore they weren't even on the same projects. Funny how their per diems landed in the same cities on the same dates. Cash withdrawals appeared like breadcrumbs. 40 here, 60 there, then 200 right before a restorative Sunday workshop. She said some instructors preferred cash. Maybe they did. Our bank statements preferred daylight. A few months back, garment bags appeared in our closet. Black, sleek, silver zippers. Tags from a store she used to call aspirational. Evening gowns spaced like museum pieces. When I joked, planning to crash a gala, she said they were for promo shoots, the kind her department never actually handled. She rolled her eyes and added, "You know nothing about marketing," in a tone that landed playful and also like a tiny slap. At family events, she treated me like the world's friendliest intern, useful, presentable, peripheral. I'd ferry plates, snap photos, ask polite questions while she held court. On the way home, She'd squeeze my thigh and talk wedding venues as if that made us close again. We were definitely getting married next spring, she'd say, even as her ring finger stayed bare, and her eyes slid past mine to the skyline like she was checking whether on a future I wasn't invited into. Her apps told their own story by telling none at all. Threads vanished. Entire conversations reduced to a single neutral sounds good. The watch, a loud little traitor when we first moved in together, learned manners. No previews, no banners, just a polite tap against her skin I couldn't interrogate. Work tightened the data policy, she said. Sure. Corporate privacy that looked a lot like personal secrecy. I replayed the night she came home with conference hair, styled and windproof, the kind that survives 3 hours of laughter and 1 hour of air conditioned like a designer's conscience. She'd been at a networking dinner, the kind that starts at 6 and ends at 11 and leaves a lipstick mark on a coupe glass you didn't buy. When I hugged her, her blouse smelled like bergamot and the same cologne I'd only ever noticed around Nate. She laughed at my nose and told me I was jealous of success. I let it pass. It's easier to feel prudish than accurate. Even the apartment started keeping secrets. She moved a shoebox from the hallway closet to the very back of the top shelf where we store spare blankets. Inside were lanyards from past conferences, 2 burner-level phone chargers, and a travel-sized bottle of men's shampoo. Hotel amenity, she said. I said okay. I say okay a lot. It's a word that buys you time you never get back. During retreats, she posted sunrise photos with captions about breath and gratitude. The sunrises were real. The metadata, when the app forgot to strip it, placed her not at a mountain lodge but 3 blocks from the harbor. I didn't tell her I knew. I wanted to see how long the river would pretend it wasn't running to the sea. It wasn't all data points. Some of it was the look she gave me, like I was a commercial break in the middle of her favorite show. With my friends, she smiled at the right times, but her attention floated, tethered to some other feed. At home she sat beside me, angled a few degrees away, just enough to drop the temperature in the space between our shoulders. She pressed for marriage the way a publicist presses for coverage. Loud, insistent, wrapped in inevitability. We should pick a date, she'd say. My mother needs a timeline. I'd say, let's talk budget. And she'd accuse me of being unromantic. The future, I realized, had become a stage direction. She didn't want a partnership. She wanted a production schedule. In quieter moments, kindness still happened. She brought me coffee exactly right. She texted photos of dogs she met on runs. She sang along to old songs while she did dishes. Those moments made me feel cruel for doubting her, like I was vandalizing my own house. But trust isn't a vibe you conjure because you're conflict-averse. It's a load-bearing structure, and mine had a crack I couldn't unsee. So I did what careful people do. I started saving things, not to *p*****, but to keep from gaslighting my own memory. Screensh *TS. Bank PDFs. Photos of receipts that accidentally made it into the dryer lint. Timestamps that whispered I wasn't imagining the pattern. I promised not to accuse without certainty. I promised I'd rather be wrong loudly than right too late. That night after dinner, when she finally fell asleep, I lay awake and watched the city throw slow headlights across our ceiling. I listened to her breathe. I thought about the envelopes, the receipt, the check-in pinging her wrist. I thought about how love shouldn't feel like auditing a company you co-own with someone who keeps changing the passwords. I didn't know yet what I'd do when I had the truth. I only knew, down in the simple place where instincts live, that her story and my reality stopped matching months ago. The puzzle wasn't complicated anymore. It was tidy, almost elegant, the way patterns are elegant when you finally step back far enough to see them. Morning would come. I'd make coffee. She'd run. We'd trade schedules and jokes. And I would keep watching, not because I wanted to catch her, but because I refused to keep losing myself in a theater where I pay for the lights and somehow never get to see the script. The dinner's last course was a caramel tart, glossy under the soft lamplight. Around me, Brooke's family shifted into Spanish without a pause, a habit they slipped into when they wanted to speak freely. They'd always assumed I couldn't follow more than a hola or gracias. Months back, I'd spent 3 weeks working with a team in Miami. I wasn't fluent, but I'd learned enough to follow a conversation, especially one where my name was repeated in a tone like someone tasting spoiled milk. Her aunt laughed low, said something about El Pobre Noah and how he never sees anything. Her cousin followed with a comment about my job, the way I play at business while Brooke handles real work. Then came the sentence that rooted me in my chair. Brooke's planned late-night meeting with Nate at that Harbor Hotel room number, floor, and the detail that made my scalp prickle, La Lave extra in her clutch, the extra key. I kept my eyes on my fork, breathing slow, while my mind picked apart every word. They weren't talking about some hypothetical. This was concrete time, place, method. And then the final, uninvited proof arrived without ceremony. Her phone lit up beside her plate, just for a second, but long enough for me to catch the thumbnail of a live photo notification from Nate. The timestamp was 3 hours earlier. The image, her in that same room, hair down in a mirror, kissing him. Not cheek, not friendly. Mouth to mouth, hand on his chest like she was making sure the camera caught the angle. In one breath, every pattern I'd noticed, every odd receipt, every carefully cleared notification collapsed into a perfect fit. There was no room left for maybe. No half answers to preserve the peace. I didn't move, didn't confront. I smiled at her mother when she asked if I wanted more coffee, pretended to listen to her uncle's fishing story, and let the evening unwind on the surface exactly as it should. The whole time, I held onto that image burned into my mind. Not just the photo, but the casual cruelty of her family's voices. So sure I was deaf to their contempt. She had given me the whole truth, just not in the way she thought. I didn't cause a scene that night, didn't flip the table or drag her out by the arm the way a lesser version of me might have wanted. I let the performance run to its natural end. Dessert plates cleared, coats retrieved, air-kissed goodbyes, and then I walked her to the car as if nothing was wrong. She was chatty on the drive back, riding the high of another flawless Brooke as centerpiece evening. I kept my answers short, my tone flat enough for her to notice but not question out loud. I didn't want questions. I wanted silence and the space to line up my next steps without her hands in the mix. When we pulled into the lot, I told her I'd left something in my office and might be back late. She kissed my cheek without meeting my eyes and disappeared inside. I sat in the car for a full minute, the steering wheel cold under my palms, before starting the engine again. The next 4 hours were methodical. I drove straight to my apartment. My apartment, not ours, because I had never given up the lease. She teased me about keeping it like a bachelor's escape hatch. I'd laughed at the time. Now it was my war room. First came the photographs. The day-use receipt, the hotel key envelopes I'd seen in her clutch, the live photo on her phone I'd glimpsed at dinner. I didn't touch her phone, just jotted the timestamp and the sender's name into my notes. I logged into our shared bank app, screensh * ting cash withdrawals, hotel-adjacent bar charges, and the suspicious event space invoice from last week. Each image got dropped into a secure folder. Then the financial triage. I withdrew only my share from our joint accounts. Nothing petty, nothing she could spin into a theft accusation. I froze the shared credit cards, filed change of address requests for my payroll and any bills in my name, and revoked her access to my insurance plan. It wasn't anger driving me. It was clarity. Anger burns out. Clarity keeps its pace until the job is done. Around midnight, my phone buzzed with a message from Lily, her younger sister. We'd always been on good terms. She didn't have Brooke's polished edges, didn't treat conversations like networking events. The message was short. I'm sorry. I've known for a while. I won't cover for her anymore. Before I could type a reply, another bubble appeared. Leaving for Nashville tomorrow for my internship. There's a seat if you want it. I stared at the screen, the offer sinking in like warm water. I hadn't thought about leaving Savannah, not really, but the idea of putting physical miles between myself and Brooke's orbit was suddenly the only thing that made sense. By 2 a.m., the decision was set. I'd pack light, ride sh*TG*N in Lily's little hatchback, and figure out the rest from there. No dramatic confrontation. No final scene for her to twist into some victim monologue. Just absence, a clean, unambiguous void she could fill with whatever story she wanted. while I started writing a different one. 3 a.m. I slept for the first time in weeks. The morning was gray when I pulled into the lot. I didn't go upstairs. Instead, I slipped an envelope under the door to the building manager. Keys, an inventory list of anything I was leaving behind, copies of receipts for anything I'd taken. It was tidy, undeniable. By noon, my essentials were packed into Lily's trunk, suitcase, laptop bag, guitar case, one box of books. The rest stayed behind, neatly labeled for her to sort or toss. I didn't block her number, didn't delete her from anything. That wasn't for her. That was for me. A record in case the story ever needed telling in a way that required receipts. 2 p.m. Lily pulled up in front of my building. She didn't ask questions, didn't fill the air with sympathy. Just popped the trunk, slid a travel mug of coffee into the cup holder, and said, "Ready." The skyline thinned in the rear view, and with it, the constant background hum of her presence. In its place was a strange quiet. Not the hollow kind, but the kind that lets you hear your own thoughts again. I realized, somewhere between mile markers, that this wasn't me running away. It was me walking out of a house that had been on fire for a long time. Tomorrow, she'd find the apartment empty. She'd get an email from my lawyer with a document laying out dates, transactions, and the evidence folder link. And she'd see the short farewell I'd typed in Spanish. Just enough for her family to understand that I'd heard every word they'd said about me over dessert. She'd have the void she'd built, and I'd have the first real step out of it. By the next morning, Savannah had the heavy, wet heat it wears like a second skin in late summer. Somewhere in that soup of air, Brooke was waking up to find the space she thought she knew stripped bare. The building manager would have given her the envelope by now. Keys neatly labeled, the inventory list typed and signed, receipts for anything I'd removed. The manila packet was practical, but it was also a message. There's nothing here for you to come looking for. Her phone would have pinged by the time she'd finished scanning the list. The email from my lawyer wasn't dramatic, no accusations, no threats, just a table of dates, line items, **TS, and an encrypted folder link. Receipts from bars and hotels. Notification timestamps from her watch and phone. Bank withdrawals matched to those Friday client meetings. The kind of record you couldn't talk your way around, only through. At the bottom, a paragraph in Spanish. Short, sharp, and deliberate enough that her family could translate it without guessing. I understood everything you said. I heard all of it. I wasn't there to see her read it, but I could picture her lips pressing thin, the little muscle in her jaw ticking the way it did when she realized she'd lost control of a story. By mid-afternoon, I was getting drips of confirmation without looking for them. A mutual friend posted a photo from the marina, captioned vaguely about awkward afternoons, and tagged no one. In the background, blurred, was Brooke, standing alone near the railing, her phone in hand like it might still have the power to fix something. Lily had her own update. "She's been calling me," she said, one hand on the wheel as we climbed north through Georgia. "Not about you specifically, well, not just about you. She wants to know why I left her in it." "In it?" I asked. "Her mess?" Lily said, glancing at me. "She thinks I should still run interference with Mom and Dad." I told her no, that's done. According to Lily, the family group chat had gone quiet on her. No more photos of her mother's garden, no check-ins about travel plans. When Brooke tried to start casual conversation, memes, baby pictures from a cousin, responses stalled or didn't come at all. Silence is heavier than words when you've been used to applause. Work wasn't better. One of Lily's old co-workers, still in the same department as Brooke, sent her a **T. Two colleagues trading cryptic messages about overlapping retreat schedules and the Nate situation. One line stuck with me: "He's already asked for a transfer." I didn't know if Nate's sudden request came from guilt, fear, or the need to protect his own skin, but the effect would be the same. Without him, she'd be stuck explaining to her bosses why her event logistics kept overlapping with someone who was no longer in the building. The circle she'd built, family for optics, colleagues for cover, me for stability, had holes now, big ones, and she was standing in the middle of it, No audience left to clap for the Brooke show. I didn't get satisfaction from that image the way I thought I might. It wasn't joy. It was more like watching a storm system break up on radar, knowing the damage had already been done, but at least it was moving away. That night, in a small-town motel a few hours south of Nashville, Lily scrolled through her phone while I pretended to read. "She's on her third story post," Lily said finally. "Quotes about betrayal and starting over. No names. But I didn't look up. Let her have them. Because that was the thing. She could flood the internet with curated pain, but she couldn't change the fact that I'd walked away without giving her the scene she could spin. No slammed doors in her face. No screaming match for her friends to frame as mutual toxicity. Just absence. And absence, I was learning, doesn't give you much to work with when you're T.